Hi, welcome to Rise and Shine with Alissa. I am your hostess, the consultress, bringing you awesome conversations with amazing people from the front lines of innovation and maybe things you haven't thought about in this age of disruption where nothing is going back to normal, everything is new and up for review. And I get to bring you my dream team here. I feel very privileged and honored to bring this conversation to you today with Mariah of Terra Healing. She is my rock and also a prime collaborator in my wellness space in the taking care of me. So essentially, she's one of the people that helps bring me to you. So with that said, welcome, Mariah.
Hi. Well, I'm super excited to be here. And that it's funny how so many things you say just kind of like set me off down a hole. And I was like, that's the thing I do. I bring people to themselves so they can bring themselves back into their life and to the people around them. So that's
Yeah.
a new thing for me now. Just got to put that on a business card.
Well, now you have it out in the World Wide Web.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. Isn't that even better? So much better.
Yeah. So the reason why I met Mariah was because I had moved geographic locations and had to start to build my local community from scratch. And it took a while. It probably took me about a year and a half before I met you. And I feel so grateful that I did because I was looking for someone who got me, who understood me, but also, I didn't have my regular practitioners of how I used to take care of myself. So I took a giant leap for 18 months, moving my family, heavy lifting, literally lifting furniture, etc., and needed to like come back home to my body. And that's kind of where you entered my scene as a friend and as a colleague. Like, yeah, no, I understand where you're at. Let me provide some tidbits. And so we've had amazing conversations.
Yeah.
So what brought you to your work with Tower Healing?
Oh, that's such a loaded story. I mean, I've always been a very like physically affectionate person. Like that's how I communicate with people, is being near them and wanting to hold them and all that space. I got a lot of being in high school, like, oh, massage therapy isn't a real job, find something else. And obviously I was a park ranger for several years. I'm very passionate about that job. I loved it. It's a seasonal job. So there was no health insurance or anything like that. I needed something to do in my off season because just sitting on unemployment wouldn't catch it. So I went for massage therapy, and it like opened up. I always think of it like a tree, because it's like you go out, you follow the one branch, and then like there's 12 million other branches that kind of expand off of that one. And I went down a couple rabbit holes, and then ultimately decided to leave my job as a park ranger to do this full time. It's just, I can see so much direct benefit with people, and I feel like I as an individual can make such a huge impact. So it really like it's a lot more bang for my buck with like the limited amount of time that I have on this earth. There's a train here. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
Probably not.
I did.
I'm
We
excited.
live
There's
in the
never
land of
trains
trains.
anymore. I know. I don't
I
ever
was
hear them anymore.
I'm very impressed with the amount of transportation there is in this area that we live. But also, though, I want to touch back to what you said about like your love language is physical touch.
Mhm.
And for me, that's one of the things that is largely missing. Being an Italian from New York, like you grab everybody and you kiss their face and you
Yeah.
hug everybody and everything is exuberant. And,
Yep.
having to kind of change tack and like learn a new culture, learn a new space. That was one of the things that was really missing for me because who wants to hug a perfect stranger? I mean, I do.
Yeah. Me. It's me. I do.
So, that love language, it spoke volumes, but I love how you've turned your number one way of communicating compassion and love into something that really pays forward, like into the depths of people. So you don't just work, and what I found anyway, you don't just work with the body and like doing a massage for relaxation or what have you. So what's your approach when you take somebody on as a client?
Um, I feel like a good the first introduction is really important to me. It's important to me to make sure they feel at ease and comfortable, because it's a big step in vulnerability to begin with. And in this world where we're all so disconnected with ourselves, let alone the people around us, taking those first few minutes to get to know someone, see what's going on in their life, sit down with them and kind of ask them how they're feeling. before I even lay hands on them can be just, it can make or break how the massage is going to go. If I'm feeling rushed or they're feeling uncomfortable, it's really important to just not jump right into that. But usually I take a couple minutes to kind of settle once I'm actually planning to work on them, just with my hands on their body, to give our bodies a chance to kind of communicate with each other. Because I do work more than physically in people. I work with the energy in their bodies. I work with their current self, but then also a lot of the work I do relates to their past, old injuries, things that are coming up from like decades before and things like that too. But then it's also important to meet them in that mental space as well. Big stressors going on in their life currently, or just things that they're uneasy about in general, lots of body sensitivities, insecurities and stuff like that. So it's kind of, I'm trying to take all the fragments of a person and put them back into a whole so they can be more connected with themselves, and then they can be physically present for the work that I'm doing. Because at the end of the day, I can do a massage all day, but if they're not willing to give back or connect to that, it's not going to have a long-term result. Like, it still feels great, it's amazing, it can do a lot, but the kind of earth shattering, world shattering changes that I try to bring about in the work have to be from someone who's met me on the same level. So
And I love what you said. It's not about break fix. So much in like healthcare or like self-care, it's like, oh, go get a massage. It feels like culturally we're conditioned to see it as a transaction. And what I
yeah,
love about my experience of your work is that it feels like an ongoing developing relationship where the gains get to stack on top of each other rather so than be addressed and come back for the same thing over and over again. That feels very hamster wheel-ish. And while I can appreciate that transactional massages are a thing and transactional wellness and healthcare is a thing, I don't think it's where we're going in terms of what's coming for the world at large. I think the deep nature of how you get to know someone, where they are, and the surface level of what's going on with them, and all of the component parts that have added to their suffering, it does feel very much like you're healing their whole world, which ironically, or maybe intentionally, healing their whole world, Terra healing is like you're healing their universe and helping them to
it's
transcend that suffering paradigm.
yeah, it's working with someone in, I don't like to say parts or fragments just because I don't think that anybody's broken. I think like we might get a little scattered at times, but it's really, to me, it's kind of about peeling back the layers. So when I meet someone, I'm just getting introduced to them. I'm on that outside layer. And then as we work, we can get deeper. And that goes for the physical work too. I can't always address the most important issue in the first session because there's too many layers protecting that space. Because it's an injury and it's natural for our bodies to want to take care of us. So I'm also really big into talking to people about how they speak to themselves. And this was probably high school or college. I don't even remember how I read something or saw something where someone was like, boy, I would never let a friend speak to me the way I speak to myself, or I would never let somebody else speak to my friend the way I speak to me. So why do we allow talking to ourselves like that? So I'll get on people for just using cruel language to communicate with themselves, because our bodies hear that and feel that energetically with the water in our bodies. It can change the composition and change the way our body feels about us too. So
Oh,
that relationship goes both ways.
it's profound how our body feels about us. How many conversations have we had out there that is like
Yeah.
how we feel about each other, but the relationship with us to our physical container,
Yeah.
we don't
Yep.
really anthropomorphize it that way to be able to really listen to our bodies. We think of listening as actual physical sound, but when we're talking about listening to our bodies or having a relationship with our body, we have to learn to listen for or observe a different kind of language. And I
Yeah.
love what you said about listening to it in a way that is like it's responding to us, to our mental
Yeah.
state, to our emotional state. So
Yeah.
it's like having a identical twin, no, what's conjoined twin, right?
Yeah,
So like,
it's a back and forth, it's a communication. Your body needs to feel like the messages it's sending you are being heard, and it needs to know that it's safe with you. So I get clients very, very frequently, clients that are like, "Oh, I know it's going to hurt so bad, but like it's going to hurt and it's going to be over." And I was like, "Okay, it's okay to feel some of that discomfort, but at the end of the day, if your body is like you're holding your breath, you're bracing yourself, you're very uncomfortable, and you're just pushing through it, your body's like, oh, I don't really trust that judgment. That made me feel unsafe. And the next time that we try something like that, its immediate reaction is going to be to shut down. So
mm,
spending time sitting with your body, feeling things, and not being judgmental about what you feel either. We have a tendency to like, the only time I notice my shoulder is when it's causing problems. And that's not a healthy relationship either. So,
I so my experience of this dialogue was drawn out for me because as many of you know, I grew up in the bagel business. I grew up waking up, shot out of a cannon, getting to the front line, giving coffee, preparing sandwiches, running, and being on my feet for 9, 10, 12 hours, and then crashing hard when I got home. And I have not been in the bagel business for a long time now. And I had an experience the weekend before I went to go see Mariah, and my body very much was like creaky, disjointed, because I had spent 2.5 days standing in front of my computer. And while that was better than sitting in front of my computer for 2.5 days, my body remembered the amount of stress and pain that I put it through to be able to serve other people. It was like this deeply held and locked belief that like I have to sacrifice my physical health for other people's convenience. They're coming into the
mhm,
store, they're grabbing their coffee and their bagel, and they're out, and I'm going until I'm so exhausted that I literally drop dead.
yeah.
Sleeping, not dead, dead.
Oh, yeah. It's super awkward.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be super
And
awkward.
it, that really, the really popular book right now, I mean, it's popular in my life and the people I communicate with. I don't know if the general world knows about it, but The Body Keeps the Score talks about how our body remembers those traumas, physical, mental, emotional, perceived, actual, from our entire life. And even if you consider going back to us as a cell, an egg in our grandmother's body, the trauma that they were experiencing in that period can pass down to your mother, that can pass down to you. So it isn't always just your stuff either. Sometimes it's other people's stuff.
Yeah. And I think the solve there was feeling so exhausted that I needed to just like take a break from everything, and then entered the mentality of I'm lazy. And I remember very specifically you telling me something that
I
you're going
hate
to
that
tell me
word.
again right now.
I hate it when people call anything lazy. I don't think it's even possible. I don't think that's a real thing in the world. We look at, lions lazing in the sun, quite literally lazing in the sun, right? That's where the term comes from. They're not being lazy. They just don't have anything to do with the time and they're fine with that. And lazy is such a huge part of people's negative self-talk. They're like, yeah, I should go to the gym today, but I'm just feeling lazy. Maybe your body needs a break. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe physically, mentally, emotionally, you've been draining yourself, running on exhaust, running in survival mode. And ultimately, what's going to happen is if you don't take the time to relax and be calm and be still and quiet, your body's going to crash. And whether that crash is a mental breakdown or some physical disaster, it's hard to tell which one it's going to use to communicate. But each time you ignore your body's request for something, it's going to escalate its demands until ultimately, usually when I was in college, it was a really good example. I was working a couple jobs and going to school full time. And every year after the semester would finish, I would be dead sick for about a week because I had been pushing my body. And the agreement that I'd made with my body was, you just have to get me through finals and then we're good. So my body was like, all right, it's finals, we're done. So I was useless the week afterwards. So it was kind of, that was an example of a conversation, a communication that I had with my body well before I was even aware that communicating with the body was so important. It was like I made a deal. I was like, as long as you keep your shit together for long enough, I'll give you a break. And then the problem was that I never learned from that. And then I'd do it again the next year and my body would be like, you said that that was like a one-time thing, and here we are again. So I'm better at that now, but we apply that term lazy to ourselves so quickly, and I highly, highly discourage it. I hate it so much because I don't think anybody is actually lazy. I don't think it's even possible to be lazy. I don't think that's a thing. So
No, so a friend of mine who is a very successful tech entrepreneur who's been on this podcast a bunch, he actually decrees for himself that he is the most productive lazy man that ever lived, because all of the automations, all of the systems that he built to build his business were because he didn't want to freaking do it again. He wanted to do it and then
that's
maybe
great.
like set it up and modify it once in a while. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's
oh, so
amazing.
yeah, so laziness is actually the seed of entrepreneurial success. Maybe that's true, right?
I'm never as productive as when I'm procrastinating, so that could very well be it. But I love the use of technology for stuff like that. It's kind of, because to begin with, it's very high maintenance, but once you get it going, it can be so low maintenance, it seems like it's cheating. But why not cheat when we can at stuff like that? If he has the ability to set up those processes, good for him. That's amazing. I have a couple friends that are very tech minded, and I can't always understand what they're saying, but they're obviously super passionate about it, and it's making their lives more enjoyable and easier, and I'm all for that. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what space and relaxation does for our productivity. We have it upside down in our culture that we have to press on, push, gut it out, work through at the expense of everything, because when we get there,
yeah,
everything's going to be great. What that's actually
yeah.
doing is training ourselves to live in a lifestyle and in a constant mental state of chaos and sacrifice. So why is the end of all of that experience not chaos and not sacrifice? It's just not true.
That
That's a myth.
yes. Yep. Yeah. When you've been living in a house that's on fire for a really long time and it gets put out, something seems wrong, something seems off. And our bodies kind of get used to living in that, and they crave that kind of consistent chaos. So it can be difficult even to come back from it. I know. So I quit 3 jobs last year. So I'm a prime example of the change in lifestyle schedules. And I was very sleepy for several months. All I wanted to do was sleep, and it was winter too, so like that's a natural, like I want to hibernate. I always joke, everybody talks about spring cleaning this time of year, they're like tearing their house apart and cleaning everything. I go through a fall nesting period where I want to get rid of lots of old stuff so I can like nestle down into my space for the winter and not have to do anything. Well, I did that last year, not knowing I wouldn't be returning to my job as a park ranger because it wasn't planned at that point. And then I nested down, and then I didn't come out of it probably until like February or March. I started to
But
like, oh, there's stuff out here in the world again to participate in. So but my body probably needed that because I've always had at least 2 jobs since I was like 16. I mean, I even had a paper out before that, but it's just the demand on my time now is so different and so less aggressive than it used to be. My body's kind of reeling and feeling like something's wrong, and I'm having too much downtime. So let me start like a bunch of new hobbies. So I have to kind of like rein myself back in and be like, or we're just going to do nothing. And by nothing, I also mean like intentionally not scrolling on my phone or TikTok and stuff like that.
yeah,
Because that's like my brain's, oh, you have some downtime, you better fill your brain with something because you can't sit in silence because there's scary stuff in the brain, and if you get in silence, you're going to start thinking about stuff. So intentionally stepping away from my phone and spending a minimum of an hour a day just sitting with myself
it's
is kind of
so
a new
incredible.
thing to me. And the first couple of times it was horrendous, and I was nervous and I was uncomfortable, and I thought about things I didn't want to think about, and but now it's something that I kind of look forward to. So
Yeah, I came across this book by Sylvia Boorstein. Don't just do something, sit there. I
mm,
have got to tell you that it is for us, you know, progressive and ambitious types. Doing nothing is like taboo. It's like you can't do nothing. You got to fill everything with as much stuff as you can. Carpe diem. You only live once. Yeah, you only live once. And if
Yeah,
you want to actually live, you have to feel all the balance. So this book actually is like a self-guided silent retreat.
I love that. I would like to
Oh,
borrow
all
that.
sorts of
But
stuff came up.
I wanna pause and go back to the feel the balance thing.
Yeah.
Just like occasionally just words that you say are just like bah, in my head. I really like them. And feel the balance is, I think, a really important one. Um, I remember, I'm kind of aging myself, but I don't really care. Um, Back before there were cell phones, imagine this. Being in the bathroom and being so bored, I was reading the back of shampoo bottles over and over and over again. And I was talking to a younger kid the other day, and they were like, "What? Why? What?" And I was like, "Well, we didn't have phones. I remember riding my bike to a friend's house to see if they were home if they didn't answer the phone." But and I feel like I'm one of the very last generations that remembers that kind of stuff as well as I do, because I didn't get a cell phone until I was in high school. And since then it's been constant stimulation and bombardment on my senses just forever, and I haven't spent any time just with myself. And I see that in the attention span of myself and of younger people who are just not familiar with how to exist without cell phones. So
Yep. It's been a constant ebb and flow in our household of, how much screen time do you get when you see mom working from the computer and always on the phone and constantly making plans for the family to do X, Y, and Z. I put a digital well-being app on my son's phone, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe I should put one on mine.
yeah. Yeah, just talking with someone about considering a digital well-being time or like a screen timer for their kid, I was like, that's great. But why do they suddenly not need that once we're 18 or whatever? Like, why is that not something that I would have on myself as an adult? So I put one on, and I'm going to be completely honest, it lasted 2 days. And then I was like, no, I'm taking this off. So maybe this is my sign to put it back on, even if I don't like it.
So
Might
what
be a
we
good
measure,
idea.
so what we measure expands, right? We've
Yeah.
been like talking about like how we intentionally focus on stuff, and we get to invite our thoughts and as well as like how we communicate with ourselves and our bodies. But the digital well-being measurement sometimes is enough. If you just
Yeah.
check where you've been and what you've been up to, that can be enough, rather so than putting the locks on the box and saying, I'm only going to spend 40 minutes in Facebook. I'm only going to spend 30 minutes in my email. I want to make sure I'm only text messaging from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Like, we're doing the same thing that we did to our body just a few minutes ago about I'm going to push you until you break and then I'll give you a break.
Yeah.
We're locking ourselves digitally into this thing we think we should do, and then
Yeah.
like wanting to rebel and break out of it because it doesn't fit. The should doesn't fit.
The should doesn't fit. Don't should on yourself. I think I've said that to you before as well. That's another one of my
Yes.
favorite. Don't should on yourself. I should do this. I should be doing that. I should have done that. Don't no, don't should on yourself. But I don't know that the digital well-being timer is enough for me on my phone because I'll just ignore it. But I do know that because I'm one of the ways I relax and de-stress is I play games. I don't tend to watch a lot of TV or movies, but I play games online and stuff like that. And some games have functions built in where you can see how many hours you've spent in certain games. And there are some games that I'll look at them and be like, you have spent consecutively 4 months playing this game. And I'm like, that's literally 4 months of nonstop time of my life that I've done in this game. And I was like, I mean, I guess it's a fun habit for me. It's stuff like that. It's not a big deal. But boy, does that put things into perspective.
So hold
So
on. Can you just define 4 months of consecutive time? Does that mean you added up the hours to equal a day that then equaled 24 hours that then equaled a full week after 7 of those 24-hour blocks? That
yep.
since the dawn of this game and you playing it, if you would have not slept for 4 months, you would have aggregated it all into that time?
Yep, it's a game I started playing in 2009 or 10, something like that. It was just outside of high school, and I still play it now. Not like I used to, but you figure if I played 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's 20 hours already. That's a whole day. And then I've been doing it for 15 years now. So it's not like four
Okay.
months out of
That's better.
15 years is
That's
not a
better.
ton of time.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Because I'm
yeah.
like four
But still,
consecutive
like,
months.
yeah, no. Yeah, and I just got it in January. No, it's not that bad. But that's just one of the games I play. There's other, that's probably the game. Okay, I shouldn't even say probably. That is the game that I have played the most in my entire life. But other games, like I got Hogwarts Legacy on my Switch, there's days in that game too, because I would spend the whole day just hanging out. And it's, I also like to read. So it's just, what are we doing with our downtime? So
Mm-hmm.
but as long as I'm like checking in with that and making sure it's not consuming my life, because it's also not good for our bodies. Our bodies want to move, even if you're just rolling around on the floor. I like it when people roll around on the floor too. That's good for you as well.
It is. We've done that. Forest
So
floor.
good for you. Yeah, floor's
So,
great.
I just want to pinch back to the digital well-being. So, what I recommend, rather so than setting timers and seeing, if you meet your goals as like a risk reward type of or a quid pro quo type of timing, my recommendation and the thing that's working for me is having the awareness of, oh, I just lived and did what I did and played what I played and talked to who I talked to. I wonder how much time that took me, and then looking at it on a weekly basis. So I spent,
Yeah,
3 hours more this week on my phone than I did previously, where now I'm trying to balance that time between working everything with my thumbs, then doing more of it on the actual computer where I can be standing up and
yep.
interactive. So, for me, it's just noticing and then making decisions from that awareness rather so than making a decision and then feeling like I didn't meet that goal.
Yeah, that's a good way to view it too, and put it. And little tricks like that. It's funny how stuff like that can change so much of our lives and things.
Yeah, and my whole relationship with my physical body, with my tendency to emotionally eat, my tendency to eat when I'm stressed out, or to want to eat better and then not buy the foods that I crave and then like intentionally go out and binge on them because they're not at home, right? It's just noticing these tendencies because I come from a brain that says, I should be this ideal. And if I'm not, then I'm less than, and I should feel guilty about it, which, like I said before, about stress out so you can have peace, it doesn't work. You can't guilt yourself and shame
No,
yourself into happiness or contentment. It
nope,
does not compute.
it's not a willpower thing. It's not. Yeah,
No, so approaching it more with curiosity and experimentation, that's a much better mix because you continue to be curious and experiment even after you achieve what it is you may have wanted before, but because it just feels like who you're becoming rather so than like this medal that you get to put on and then show everybody. And then when you're done, you feel let down. My husband and I were having a conversation last week, and he was like, well, this is the thing that, some Olympic athletes or some, professional athletes have is like they get to that Super Bowl and then they're like, well, that's the only thing I've ever wanted since I'm 5. Fucking now what?
that kind of happened to me when I got my job as a park ranger, because that was my goal from age 10 to when I actually got the job as a park ranger. And I it's like, well, I don't even remember specifically how old I was, but I was in my mid 20s, and I was like, this is too old for a midlife crisis. So we need we need to get something else going, which is that's when I started massage. And that'll never end, because every single session, even with each person, is completely different, let alone different people all the time. So it's certainly never boring, that's for sure. For sure.
Yeah, and isn't that what we're built for? I mean, I love the time that we're spending here together, and I can't wait to do it again. But like, let's just pull this all into a bow. It's like we are meant as humans not to be indoctrinated into industrial age thinking and to feel like we're a cog in some gigantic or someone external's machine. Like the reason
Mhm.
we're here is to be able to evolve, be our best selves, and pay forward the things that we learn from our experiences. And at the end of the day, that's what makes life full for me. I am so
Yeah.
grateful that part of that experience of growth and experimentation and learning has been with you. And I am imploring all of you out there, if you don't have a way to have silence during your day or during your week, look into ways to have mindfulness. I know Dina Proctor has something out there called the 3x3 meditation. It's like 3 minutes at a time, 3 times a day. Mariah, you mentioned a book, The Body Keeps the Score. So if you're in physical pain or feeling a little bit of discomfort there, or you have some goals that have been there forever that you're not meeting for whatever reason that might be, we discussed a lot today. Go check out that book. Or again, if you really want to throw yourself into the deep end and take yourself on a silent retreat and just see what's actually happening already behind the scenes of keeping yourself busy, I highly encourage it. It was really uncomfortable for me, but very eye-opening to a lot of my knee-jerk and survival-based tendencies that I was seeking to solve, but I couldn't get to the root because I wasn't willing to sit with it long enough. So Mariah, thank you for being here on my guest on my podcast and being one of my dream team for my Alissa superhero as I'm becoming it team.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I always love this.
Right on, ladies. So stay tuned. We broadcast every Monday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So come like, subscribe, comment, because Mariah will be back, ladies and gents. So drop us some comments, what you think, what you feel, what came up for you that we can address in our conversation next time. So for now, rise and shine, and I will see you next time. Same bat time and same bat channel. So long.